Welcome to the Iferia TechCast, where we bring all things science, engineering, technology, and innovation. In this episode, we are joined by Patrick Williams, a TEDx speaker, award-winning artist, and founder of Satori Innovation. With over 40 years of experience teaching creativity, Patrick helps engineers and technical professionals unlock their innovative potential. Patrick's unique perspective bridges art and science, showing how creativity fuels engineering breakthrough. His work has been featured in exhibitions worldwide, and his TEDx talk reveals how we can all reconnect to our innate creativity. So, firstly, sir, in your opinion, I'd like to ask, is cre- is creativity essential in technical fields like engineering, and why would you say so? Why or why not?
Oh, I think creativity is essential to engineering. I think problems happen when an engineer in any of the fields of engineering don't have access to their creativity. Because when you're looking at a situation, let's say some kind of engineering challenge, a problem, so to speak, I tend not to use the word problem. I can explain further at some point. But when an engineer is looking at a situation, they have to look at it in as many possible ways as possible. And if they are connected to their creativity, they are able to look at the engineering situation from a lot of different perspectives. And with each different change in the engineer's point of view, they will be open to experiencing solutions. And if you're not used to working with your creativity, and when I say creativity, I'm not talking about making a painting or making music or a dance or a sculpture. Obviously, those creativity is used in all of those things, but I'm talking about a core quality of what it means to be a human being, and that one of those core qualities is creativity. So the engineer can tap into creativity, and they must. All I would say all great engineers have some type of fluency and connection to their creativity. So I believe that creativity is essential to good and excellent engineering.
Oh, great. That's quite a good perspective you put it into. So, I'd like to ask, in your TED talk, you shared how the loss of your childhood woods, that's the oak trees and those other trees you talked about in the TED talk, you shared how they became a spark that ignited your creativity. So, do you believe that creativity always stems from a defining moment, or can it be developed gradually?
Wow, that's a I haven't thought of it that way. I believe that it can come out of any situation. And I say this because when we're children under the age of, let's say, 6, we are all incredibly creative. So that what happens is that we sometimes we misplace our creativity. We can't, it can't go anywhere because it's part of who we are as a human being. But we sometimes misplace it. We lose track of it. So in my life, that spark happened within my life, that I already had a a good and deep connection to my creativity, but this raised it to another level. I had, in some ways, all of those trees represented the potential that I had inside of me, but I feel like that potential is inside of each one of us. That doesn't take a challenging or a traumatic experience to ignite our creativity. It could come from something joyous, as it would be if you were listening to a symphony for the first time, or if you saw a particular sunset triggered by nature. Nature often triggers a deep connection to our inner creativity. Nature is a is extravagant representation of what creativity can be and do. So I think sometimes in our lives we have moments that are intense and either almost or traumatic that will spark a change in our behaviors, but I don't think it's necessary. I think I think we can, if for example someone is interested, when they're hearing you and I talk about this, they may say, well, you know what? I want to get back into my creativity. So it was from a listening to you and I discuss creativity that someone might begin their personal exploration rather than a intense process that I experienced with seeing my woods destroyed.
Wow, that's quite a great explanation. So I like to say a thing or two about that nature inspiring creativity. It's actually one thing that is being employed to get some of the best engineering designs. We see today, we see jets, military jets being inspired by falcons. We see bullet trains being inspired by birds. And we even notice that some of the best engineering designs come from people who actually took time to look into nature to get that creativity you were talking about. So yeah, just by the wayside, that's kind of what we call biomimicry in engineering.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So another question. You've described creative collapse, like the loss of creativity as we grow older, that happens in some people. Can you walk us through that concept and share how engineers or technical minded people might be able to overcome that in their work?
Absolutely. So when we're growing up, we experience our creativity very naturally. It is simply part of who we are and how we learn in the world. And there are times in our educational process and in our life out in the world and our family life where creativity might be stopped, or people might say things that are not positive about our creativity. And as children, we're very sensitive. If a little kid at age 7 or 8 gets criticized, and if it might be just once or it might be several times that, let's say, someone without meaning to be harsh says, oh, I don't think that looks like a tree, or oh, I don't think that looks like a mountain, or that doesn't look like a house. And if that happens a few times, a child might say, I'm not going to draw anymore. And that's what I describe as creative collapse. So it's a moment when a child decides, I'm not going to make art anymore. I'm not going to dance anymore. I'm not going to make music anymore. I'm not going to write poetry anymore. Whatever it might be, that collapse encapsulates their approach to creativity, and that often continues as they get older. Partly because as we're in school, we're we're required to do more and more work. We have, you know, our day is full of schoolwork, and then we come home sometimes with a little or a lot of homework. We might be part of a soccer team. We might be playing other sports or whatever it might be. So children have less and less time to be creative. So that collapse, that creative collapse, sort of expands. And that often, sadly, it lasts the rest of people's lives. So when engineers are developing are developing in school and then after school, when they're part of a firm, if they have experienced some kind of creative collapse around, let's say, drawing, then when they're ready to look at a situation that needs solving, they may not be able to enter the space in which it can be solved without having the ability even just to doodle ideas, right? You know that word doodle, just make little, funny drawings or whatever. So, but if you're able to draw just a little bit more, you can put some ideas down on paper that are going to spark other ways to think about what you may ultimately design as a solution. So the creative collapse affects all of us, and it affects each of the people in our specific domains in different ways. So someone like yourself who has a degree in engineering, if you've had some kind of creative collapse, it's going to affect you differently than, say, somebody who is an accountant or a plumber or a secretary or something, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I'd like to ask, you said this creativity collapse affects people in different ways. So overcoming this creativity collapse, I mean, getting that spark on your creativity back in again, like you used to have in your childhood or at a moment in your life when you were more creative. Is it the same process for people in these different fields, like someone in engineering or someone in accounting or someone in business? Is it the same process to actually get your creativity back?
Yes and no, I think. I think it's as it is with everybody. And think of it with respect to the other students in your engineering classes. They all were learning engineering in somewhat the same way, but also somewhat in a very personal way. So the essence of reconnecting to our creativity is is on one part to think about how people in general connect to their creativity, but the most important part is connected to how you as an individual connect to creativity. And the important part of this is I help people with this is that we already have clues to connect to our creativity because we knew how to do it when we were young, when we're, 4, 5, 6 years old, 7, whatever it might be. All of you all as engineers, you have little clues about what you were interested in when you were a child. When you were 5 years old or 4 years old, what did you do when you wanted to play? What did you play with your friends? What did you play when you couldn't go outside? What are those things that interested you? And those will be clues on how to reconnect to your creativity. Let's say you love to kick the ball around like a soccer ball. Well, there's that that kind of play is very kinetic and very active, and it involves your whole body. It involves running, it involves foot eye coordination and all these very amazing abilities that you have to fine tune to be able to play soccer or just to goof around with the soccer ball. That can give you a clue as an engineer of how do I work on this solution. It might be go outside with a soccer ball and play, just dribble, just, do the things that you loved to do when you were a kid. But the key part of this is think about the engineering solution that you're working on while you're doing that. So while you're kicking the ball around, or let's say you loved to draw when you were a little kid, set aside a little bit of time during your day at work while you're doing engineering things to draw. And maybe pass it by with your boss first and tell them why you're doing what you're doing, and maybe even encourage your boss to do it. So it's a process that we get our memory, we get our body, we get our mind back into that state of being that we were when we were children. And that will allow ourselves to reconnect to an essence of creativity that will help us with the engineering solution. It will help us be able to talk to your friends or talk to your loved ones, your family. It'll help you negotiate driving through town. We use creativity all the time. We don't realize it.
Wow, that's quite a great explanation. So, I'd like to ask, in your opinion, can creativity be taught, or is it something that people must discover for themselves? What's your perspective on this?
I think again, it's a yes and yes, or no and no. That we are able, and it's an interesting question of asking, can creativity be taught? And ultimately, I think, as I'm in a way thinking out loud, is that no, it can't be taught because we already know it. So I'm trying to think of an example of, in a way, we know at some point what one, if we have a marble on the ground, we know that's one marble. And if we put another marble down, we know that now we have two marbles. So we just know that at some point in our life. We don't have to add it up in our head. It's just obvious that, oh, there are two marbles on the ground. So creativity is sort of like that. We know how to do it. So it isn't necessarily, we're not really able to be taught how to be creative because we already are creative. What we do is we begin to remember how we were creative. So it's the remembering that is important. Uh, and people, so there's, can it be taught? And what was the second question? I'm sorry, Ezekiel.
Okay, the question, can it be taught? And your perspective about it, basically.
Yeah, sure. So people can, once they tap into their creativity, they can learn certain techniques from others. So there are qualities of the creative process that can be taught. There are there are there are exercises that will help people move into and become more familiar with their own inner creative abilities. But the that inner essence of creativity is already there. So and people can get better at connecting with their creativity until it becomes very natural and they simply show up to whatever process or event that they are connecting to in a creative way. For example, if you're at your engineering firm and the boss has just presented everybody with this new job and it clearly needs some creativity. So then after you have some of these basic exercises, it's natural to be engaging with your inner abilities to be creative. So it is remembered. We are always in a process of remembering how to be creative, I think. Even myself, I'm still striving to listen more deeply and what I'm experiencing and tuning into as a creative person.
Wow, that's really great. It's brought my mind back to a particular stage in engineering school. So I think it was year three. So we had this particular course that the course code or the topic, the what the course is about specifically was on creative problem solving.
Hmm?
So we normally abbreviate it as a CPS. So back then, I used to always wonder, why do these people have to teach us how to be creative? Does this really have to be part of the curriculum? So I guess they were just teaching us how to remember our creative side and how to apply it to real world problems.
For sure.
Yeah. So this actually brings me now to the next question because engineering is fundamentally about problem solving. Now, do you see creativity and problem solving as interconnected? And how can creativity give engineers an edge?
Yeah, I mentioned it a little earlier. I do not look at the creative process as a problem solving endeavor. And I've written this out in a section of the manuscript that I'm working on about the philosophy of creativity. I, when I was in school at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln, one of my roommates was also an art major, and he had a different professor of painting. And I went to visit him while they were having a critique. And this is after I had been painting for a couple years in college. And I had started to paint quite a few years before that at home. I had taught myself to paint. When I got to college, I was able by chance to work with a really, really amazing painting professor that was unlike any of the other professors. I didn't know how different he was until I went to this critique. I got to the critique, and there were maybe 30 undergraduate students there and maybe 10 graduate students and the professor. And it was in one of the art history rooms. So, slanted seating, and then there was space at the front of the room, and people had lined their paintings up. And when it was a person's turn, they put their painting up on an easel, and every single person started off with saying, "This is the problem I was trying to solve." Every single person. And even though as a student, it is obvious that we are working on how to make a good composition or what color schemes to use. How are we defining the space? What kind of lines are we using? What kind of texture is happening? Or what tonalities are being employed? And those are clearly things that are important to learn as a student. And these people were being taught that they have certain problems and they need to solve it. But what was also interesting is that I was hearing graduate students say that, and I was hearing professors say that. Not my professor. My professor was extremely focused on making art and not solving a problem. So there was early on in my artistic development, I had learned not to think of a painting as a problem. There wasn't anything wrong with the the painting or the drawing. There
Mm,
were things there were things that I knew that I could make better, but I didn't think of them as something wrong. I didn't think of them as a problem. Sometimes I think it's easy for us to bring different definitions of words that don't translate. So what I mean is that when we're in math, when we're whatever level math we're working on, even if it's just arithmetic, we're given a problem to solve, 1 plus 1, that's a problem to solve. And
yeah,
yeah, so but when but in engineering, I also think that there's a connection to this. And this may be way off base, but I feel like if we disengage ourselves from, as I did, of not thinking of a piece of art as a problem to solve. What does it look like to disengage ourselves as an engineer and not look at what the situation is as a problem, but look at it as how many solutions are there to this situation? As this may be not a great example, but if I'm an engineer, think I'm not sure the right term for the engineer that builds a bridge. If I look at it as
That's a construction engineer or civil engineer.
so I'm looking at there's this river and then I have a road on this side and a road on the other side of the river. Is it a problem to solve of making a bridge? Or is it, I need to figure out how to solve this interesting project of building a bridge? So it doesn't seem like it's a problem. It seems like it's a challenge. It seems,
Wow.
does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. You're reshaping my thinking. I mean, not seeing the problem as a problem, but as a situation that you have to look for several solutions to pick the best from. That's a whole new perspective.
Excellent.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, that's great. So, next question. I normally like to save this for the last, but you already talk about it a lot. It's, I mean, a part of what I saw majorly on your profile that brought me to contact you. So, you talk about innovation a lot. What does that word actually mean to you?
Wow. Innovation. It's sort of like problem.
Wow.
Yeah. Is innovation is there are, I think, just like with creativity, there are a lot of ideas, a lot of definitions, a lot of opinions, and it is somewhat like a personal awareness of what innovation means to me, what innovation means to you, what it means to, anybody on the street. We all have a sense of what innovation is. We know that, oh, that's doing something new. I think here's Ezekiel, I think this is maybe part of it. There are scales to innovation. So not all innovations are the same, just like not all paintings are the same. Not all engineering projects are the same. A bridge, it could be as easy as just putting a log across a stream and then you have a bridge. At least you can walk over it, but you can't drive over it. So that solution is different than the log. So there are scales of complexity to innovation. What happens, I think, and this is sort of natural to people, to human beings, is that when, let's say I'm teaching somebody how to paint, and on their second week, they say, I want to get into a museum in 2 months. Well, that's not the right scale of progress that a person should be on. They may get into a museum in a couple months, but probably not. So their scale of expectation should be in balance with their scale of development. And I think that people put when they say, "Oh, I want to do innovation," they have put their scale of achievement way ahead of where they actually are. See what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I think so. Well, back to I kind of avoided defining innovation.
I was gonna bring you back to it.
Good. Thank you. So innovation is striving to expand what already exists into something that is more efficient or more enjoyable in a way, as opposed to a telephone and a smartphone. obviously that's innovation. The iPhone was the first big change, and that was massively innovative. Well, everybody wants to repeat that, but that happens in that kind of innovation doesn't happen every day. So I think we need to remember that innovation is looking at what you're interested in and seeing if you can improve on the concept of a bridge or the concept of, some kind of, if it's electrical engineering, some innovative way to think about it that nobody has thought about it that way before. And we're all able to do that. It just takes a kind of concentration that is not only about the thing you're working on. So I believe innovation also includes thinking in other perspectives, thinking of your challenge as you're kicking the soccer ball, like I used earlier, or if you go out and listen to music with a bunch of friends or with your team of engineers. This is an assignment that I give to people. If you have 5 or 10 people in your engineering department, go out with your notebooks on your project and go listen to some music. Go watch a dance performance. Go to a museum. Go outside and just sit in a park thinking about your project. And then I think that's when innovation can happen. Innovation, just like creativity, it can't be forced. It has to be, you kind of have to sneak up behind it and observe this new idea. Did I get close to defining?
I mean, not like there is a definition of innovation that I wanted to hear from you. I only wanted to hear your perspective about what innovation means, and you've very well like done a good job at explaining that to me.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'd like to ask, can someone learn to be innovative, or is it a natural trait?
I think, again, both. I think we can learn how to be innovative as we can learn how to remember to be creative. And they're very similar and they're somewhat different. So I I I don't think that you can learn innovation by following 6 or 10 steps. You might be able to become more aware of what it is like to be innovative, but I think innovation, just like creativity, just like engineering, it takes practice. And there's two kinds of, there may be more, but I think of practice in 2 ways. There are practices that aren't very substantial or important, practicing making your bed, practicing putting the groceries away, practicing these small things that I use the lowercase p in English to say those kinds of practice. But the capital P, an important practice, for example, drawing, painting, playing music, but also there's a practice to engineering. You know when you're practicing engineering because you are super focused on the task at hand. So I think it's important for people to understand that innovation and being innovative is a practice that you have to work at. Sometimes that is not what people want to hear. They want to hear, I can follow these 7 steps and then I'm going to be doing something with innovation. But that's not exactly how it works. It has to be a practice. Just like learning how to play music. You don't pick up a flute and suddenly you're playing the most complicated flute music ever made. You have to build up to it. So innovation is the same. You can learn how what kind of steps are necessary to be innovative. You can begin to remember how to be creative because that's going to be really helpful to your process of being innovative. But it comes down to being a practice. You have to set aside a little bit of time each day, or a couple times a week, that you're in your innovation mindset to work on that in particular.
Wow. So you mean there is not an itemized list of things or patterns to follow to learn to be innovative, but rather it's like a practical approach.
True. I believe that there are some good items to have a sense of how other people have been innovative. And there may be, and this depends, Ezekiel, this depends on the type of person that you are. A particular person might love having a bunch of steps in front of them that they can study, and they may follow some of them. But I am someone, just to caution people, that maybe if you're really attached to steps, maybe you're a person that should not use steps, or just experiment with not using steps. That's just an idea.
Great, great, great. So I'd like to ask, how essential is innovation in technical fields like engineering? And do you think engineers can succeed without it?
I think I think that engineers need both creativity and innovation. And again, if you if you try if you try to grab it, it's gonna fly away. So you have to pursue and hold innovation as you would hold a bird. You don't want to
Mm,
squeeze a bird. You don't want to grab a bird, because they're fragile. They have hollow bones, and they don't weigh much. So if you were going to hold a bird, you'd hold a bird very gently. And the same is true with respect to creativity or innovation. If you grab a hold of it and you squeeze it, you're just going to crush it. It's not going to remain alive for you. Inner creativity and our inner innovation abilities to be free and open, and to be able to fly, and to be able to come back to us rather than to squeeze them too tightly.
great, great. So I I see that you're the founder of Satori Innovation. So could you tell us about your work with Satori Innovation? Sorry, did I pronounce that right? Satori Innovation.
Satori is,
Satori Innovation.
and that is, and it's a Japanese word, which in Japanese it would sound Satori, but for us, Satori is the way to say it, that most people will follow it. So it's a Japanese word that means sudden awakening, which
Wow.
is connected to the martial arts and connected to meditation. Used in often in Zen Buddhism, which is a Japanese flavor, so to speak, of Buddhist thought and philosophy, where they had moments when a student would suddenly get it. They would totally understand what their teacher had been talking about for years. And this can happen also in martial arts, where you practiced and you practiced and you practiced for years and years and years, and then suddenly in a moment you understand a little bit about the whole practice that didn't make sense before, but you realize something new. And this happens with respect to art, whether it be music or painting or sculpture or dance or architecture, whatever it might be. If you practice and practice and practice with a capital P, practice, hopefully at some point there is a moment when all kinds of things make sense. There's the kind of the icon of the light bulb going on, off, going, turning on in our imagination or in our mind, where we understand something. So Satori is that kind of idea, and so I connected it with Satori Innovation. It's helping people be aware of how to have that light bulb come on, how to follow ideas into a space where innovation can happen. So I help people practice, help people with exercises, with breathing, with walking meditation, with some drawing exercises. With, if I'm with people, I do push hands, which is a Chinese practice that you put the backs of your hands against each other and you sense the energy, the physical energy, but also the subtle energy of what the other person is doing. So you move your hands around, you push and you pull. It's challenging to describe just with words, but this practice gets people into their body. It releases stress. They return to breathing more naturally. That all these practices that I do within the business is to allow people to remember their creative energies, and then they can apply that to whatever they're working on, whether it's an entrepreneurial business or an engineering business or any kind of business, any kind of group of people. I haven't worked with athletes, but it would apply to athletes, whether soccer or football, baseball, whatever it might be. Once people are able to tap into their creativity, to that natural, innate creativity that they have, then they can then connect it to innovation, if innovation is what they want. As I said, a soccer player could understand how to work the field better if they know their if they
Great. So I was going through your website for Satori Innovation and I saw your mission statement. It has something that states every innovation is a creative process. Could you please explain the relationship between creativity and innovation to us?
Sure. I believe on a core level, creativity is influencing everything we do. And I break down creativity into general creativity, conventional creativity, and specialized creativity. And innovation is most likely inside of the conventional creativity, but it also goes into, I used it earlier, so the iPhone, when that first came out, that bridged into specialized creativity. Not quite as remarkable as a great painting or a great uh, building or whatever some masterwork looks like, but it was substantial in the level of creativity. So as a basis, when we're if if our if one of our goals is to be innovative, I believe we have to have a connection to our creativity. Otherwise, in a way, using that bridge idea I keep coming back to, if innovation is on the other shore, creativity is the only way that we can get over there. So we have to be creative. We put down a log, we build a bridge, we jump. We have to employ some kind of creative process to get to innovation. So they're completely tied to each other, but creativity comes before the innovation. The innovation doesn't come first. We have to have that creative idea, that spark, that, oh, that's it. I totally get it. That is what is going to, that's what I need for the next step. And that's the innovation that will happen. So creativity always comes before innovation. Innovation emerges from our creative process.
Great. I think a lesson for me there is that creativity is like the path that leads to innovation. Yeah. All right, Patrick. Finally, I'd like to ask, how can our audience connect with you or learn more about your work?
Sure, I would love to hear from folks through email, patrick@patrickwilliams.com. I have 3 Instagram sites at PMW Creativity, at PMW_camera, and at PMW_painting. And I've just started a Substack called How to Make a Painting. And I think this is my 6th week. So every week I make a post. And the post is not just about painting, it's sort of about life and innovation. I'll throw in something about engineering now since we've had our conversation.
That's great.
Yeah, yeah. But it's just a way to talk about how to make a painting, but how important life is in making a painting. It's just not pigment, brushes, and something to paint onto. It involves everything. It involves what I'm reading, what I'm thinking, conversations I'm having, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So how to make a painting on Substack, that's new, that's fun. If people are interested, I'm happy to describe what I do in more detail through emailing me, patrick@patrickwilliams.com. I'm on LinkedIn. Patrick Williams is the way to find me. There are probably a lot of Patrick Williamses out there, but I'm not sure how to distinguish. My profile picture is me and with a white and black shirt in front of a painting, a drawing. So look for that. That's probably everything. Every place to find me, Ezekiel.
Awesome, Patrick. It really was a nice chat with you, and I'm really honored to have you on the show.
I was happy to be here. Great questions, Ezekiel.
Thank you.